Joining us now to review some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Arise News analyst Emmanuel Efeni. Great Malabite, good morning.
Good morning, Ruben. Good morning, Rufai.
Morning, sir.
Good morning, Ajesua, queen of the screen.
Good morning, thank you.
Yes, let's start the review with this day, Nigeria's newspaper of records. The lead story, big 5 banks loans to customers hit 50 trillion naira in 5 years. Access banks lead with 11.929 trillion, followed by Zenith 11.297 trillion. Yes, we call them the big boys of the banking sector. Of course, they are the 5 tier 1 banks in Nigeria, and they gave a total of 49.999 trillion naira as loans and advances to their customers between January 2016 and December 2020, according to data compiled by this day. Now, of course, following closely, Access, of course, the lead led the pack with that 11.922 trillion. Of course, Access loan grew in the last 2 years following its acquisition of its competition, Diamond Bank, and closely followed, of course, is Zenith Bank. Despite its penchant for organic growth, Zenith gave out 11.297 trillion naira during the same period. Others followed quickly. First Bank, 9.825 trillion, UBA, 9.488 trillion, and GTB, 7.460 trillion naira. Now, let's just look at other stories quickly. The Nation newspaper. Federal government demands nothing short of Igbo's extradition. Nigeria ready for diplomatic showdown if Benin Republic declines. Yes, according to the federal government has communicated its position to the Benin Republic authorities, which plans the extradition hearing today. Igbo, of course, was arrested on July 19 at the Cotonou airport, along with his wife. Now, that trial is gathering steam. Legal fireworks, but again, delegations have been sent. The Olubadan team to monitor the trial already in Cotonou. The Ooni of Ife, Ojaja, the second, Obagunwusi, has also sent a 28-man delegation to Cotonou to also follow proceedings. So we await what will come out of that trial today. Well, according to this report, the federal government wants extradition or nothing else, ready to apply diplomatic pressure, but the law must take its course, and I'm sure the Beninois authority know that they have a law. That is why they are in court. Now, the New Telegraph also reporting this story. Anxiety as Kanu Igbo appear in Abuja, Cotonou courts today. Yoruba group offers free transportation accommodation to supporters. On Haneze, Kanu's council warned against molestation. OYC urges Igbo youths to be in Abuja. Yoruba monarchs in Benin Republic meet over Igboho. So this is one story we'll be monitoring and following all day long. Now, other stories. The Leadership newspaper. After 20 days in the dungeon, tears of relief as 28 abducted Bethel students reunite with families. Parents recount ordeal. 87 others still in captivity. Banditry will consume the north, Matawale warns. Investment in youth will check insecurity. Masari While the Punch newspaper also reporting on the bandits, Baptist school students. Kaduna bandits collected 50 million naira ransom, hold back 87 students. 28 students released. Proprietor says bandits to free others in batches. Niger pupils spent 54 days in captivity. Yes, those little ones from that Islamic school, they are still in captivity. Federal government college Kebbi students also spending their 40th day in captivity. Yes, while we rejoice with the families of those who have returned, because all is well that ends well for those ones, but many families are still in sorrow over their children being in captivity. Now, the Daily Trust newspaper, kidnappers in FCT begin collection of ransom through banks. How we are made to make deposit victims' relatives. Banks not helping matters, victims. What government is doing? Yes, in a country where we're able to track how protesters were able to raise funds with Bitcoin and other sources, it should not be a problem. Tracking those who are collecting money through banks for kidnappers, they shouldn't have a free rein. But I also draw your attention to the front page comment of the Daily Trust newspaper. They are terrorists, not bandits. Yes, the name we call violent organizations and movements can have serious implications on how both the government and society react or relate to them. And I think it's about time that these bandits are properly designated as terrorists, because what they're doing is terrorism clearly. But still calling them bandits, the Daily Trust has said, well, that should not be the case, because these are people who have taken arms against the state, shooting down fighter jets of the Nigerian Air Force, and you are still calling them bandits. We move on. The Business Day newspaper, Nigeria risks lost generation on mass abduction of students. Yes, the consequences of these abductions, with mass kidnapping of students from schools becoming frequent, Nigeria risks a lost generation who might find it difficult to get ahead in life as they are stripped of the right to education. That situation is very, very serious in the Northwest, the Northeast. Now, the Daily Sun newspaper, INEC, NSA, Army, others in 76 billion illegal loan scandal. Auditor General's report exposes how agencies borrowed money from government accounts without paying. And of course, the Nigerian Tribune is also reporting this story in its front page, how INEC, NSA, Army got 76 billion naira without appropriation. Senate, funds meant for rice production released by Accountant General to Electoral Commission, others. So much for anti-corruption. Now, the Guardian newspaper, Nigeria's The Guardian. Manufacturers, importers stranded over 6.5 million duty on transit goods. Stalemate enters 46 days over border closure. Shortage of raw materials might worsen consumers to pay more amid inflation. While the Daily Independent newspaper, another business story, $2.1 billion facility. States face bleak half year as central bank begins deductions. Yes, when the states were taking this money, it was sweet.
Emmanuel Elufeni.
Now they have to repay. Yes, Robert.
Emmanuel Elufeni,
Yes.
let's take a short break, and then when we return, the review of newspapers will continue. Stay with us. Welcome back to the morning show here on the Arise News channel. Still with us is Emmanuel Efeni, who has been reviewing top stories in newspapers from around the world. Emmanuel Efeni, back to you.
Yes, we were looking at the Daily Independent newspaper of Nigeria. $2.1 billion facility. States face bleak half year as CBN begins deduction. Remember that $2.1 billion budget support facility by the Central Bank of Nigeria given to the state governments. Now the repayment time has been due. It has been postponed, but now the states must start repaying. And that itself, at a time when the amount accruing to the Federation account for sharing has gone down considerably as a result of subsidy payment. Well, those states that have been doing well in internally generated revenue will smile, while others, well, will have to make do with a bleak future, according to this report. Now, the foreign newspapers quickly. The Guardian newspaper of UK, no, first the Times of UK. COVID cases fall. Yes, COVID cases fall as jabs turn the tide. Yes, UK sees first sustained drop outside lockdown. For the first time, evidence that indeed things are looking good. For the first time, there is 5 days of sustained drop. And this is the first time in the peak of, yes, an indication that the peak of the third wave has passed, and there is some improvement because the number of confirmed infections fell for the 5th consecutive day. Yes, something to smile about. But the Guardian newspaper, also of UK, is also saying that young people urged to get jab as doctors warn over ICU admissions. Yes, the number of infections going down, but the bulk of those who are being admitted right now are young ones. Majority of those require intensive care are unvaccinated among the young ones. But cases fell for the 5th day in a row. Now the doctors are warning and begging the young ones, please take this jab and save yourself of unnecessary pain. Because for the first weekend after lockdown was lifted, a lot of youths thronged the pubs. Revelers thronged nightclubs, not wearing masks. Yet, a lot of these young ones in the UK are yet to take the vaccine. So, it is not yet Uhuru or freedom as Boris Johnson wants us to believe. So, the pressure and the appeal going to the youth to do the needful. Now, the Wall Street Journal, quickly, American airstrikes intensifies against Taliban in Afghanistan. Yes, Joe Biden, the president, had put out American troops, but they are not about looking the other way as Taliban try to overrun that country once again. So, in the South, America has intensified its strike against the Taliban to halt their moves, despite the fact that the United States of America is also talking with the Taliban. You hit them hard, you talk to them. That's the Biden style. Now, Ruben Rufai and Adesuwa, over to you.
I mean, many things to pick from this morning, but let me start from what is happening today. And it is symbolic. The trial in Abuja and what is going on in Cotonou. We have stated that before, but we'll have to reiterate. The trial will come and go, but will the injustices remain? That's a big question we should try to answer. You know, are we going to get to a point in this country where every part will say, yes, there's been some level of fairness? Because that's the formative question. And that has always been the case since the emergence of Nigeria. Go back in history. What led to the Willing Report of 57, 58? was because of these same injustices. Some people felt left behind, especially the minority group. And that time, after the Littleton Constitution, there was a need to include them. That was why we had the Willings Report. This same conversation of minority group. What led to Isaac Adakaboro carrying a gun and facing the federation of this country? This same minority agitations. So when are we going to solve this matter on ground? Because these agitations will never go away. And like I said, it's not about Nnamdi Kanu or Sunday Igbo. They are just part of the drama. Like Dr. Bati, the drama impresario will say, dramatis personae, isn't it, sir? They are just dramatis personae.
Yes.
We forget in this country we had the likes of Isaac Adakaburu. At some point, we had the likes of Ralph Wazurike. At some point, we have the likes of Asari Dokubo. All these are dramatis personae in the grand conversation about inclusion and fairness and equity and justice.
Rufai, you asked a question earlier. If there were not killings of farmers in Igongo, is not that's the place somewhere in the state?
Yes.
Anyway,
if the Southeast have not been marginalized,
are we going to have this?
Are we going to be talking about Nnamdi Kanu or Sunday Igboho? Questions. Ruben Abati, Dr. Ruben Abati.
I think questions can be raised about fairness, about equity, about justice, and about how, groups in Nigeria have been relating with each other over time. But I doubt if the agitations at play at this moment, either in the East or in the Southwest, can be described as minority agitations.
No, clearly not.
Yeah, okay, that's the first point. But one, I wanted to talk about some of these issues dealing with security. The first is the story about the bandits reneging on deal, releasing 28 out of 121 students of Bethel Baptist High School that they abducted. And we're told that the parents had to pay a ransom of 50 million. Let's just urge the relevant state authorities to provide the necessary support for these parents. You could see the joy, on the faces of those, the parents of the 28 that returned, and the pain, on the faces of the children. I think the joy will be more complete when the remaining students, over 60 of them, are also released. And then Daily Trust, you also refer to Daily Trust, the editorial in Daily Trust. They are terrorists, not bandits.
Yes.
That's the front page comment. And truly, there are many Nigerians who agree that we shouldn't play the politics of labeling. Anybody that embarks on violent action against the Nigerian state or government or institution as defined under Section 1 of the Terrorism Prevention Act of 2011, which the editorial concludes with, should just be classified as terrorists. Because banditry sometimes is used as some kind of umbrella term for kidnappers, for some other categories, in order to make their own offense lighter or seem lighter than that of actual terrorism. The big point of that Daily Trust editorial, which I think should be taken to heart, is that banditry should be classified as terrorism, and bandits should be regarded as terrorists. And I've had that view expressed by many other Nigerians. But there is also another interesting story, front page of Daily Trust, talking about kidnappers in FCT begin collection of ransom through banks. I mean, that's just an illustration of how bad the situation has become. It shows that these kidnappers, these criminals, let's use that general phrase, they become very bold. So what kind of structures do we have in place within the banking system? What kind of collaboration do we have within the banking system with the security agencies to make sure that bandits don't just walk into banks and just make away with ransom payment? There is a bill, I understand, before the National Assembly, to properly criminalize the routing of ransom payments through the banking system. But to hear that this is the case, and examples are given in that story, is a big scandal.
Ruben, what are the security agencies doing? The intelligence agents, what are they doing? Do you need special prodding for them to follow the track of these people?
Well, but you know the way it works out. Maybe the parents themselves are reluctant to go to the security agencies to say, well, the people who kidnapped our children, this is the account number they have given us. Maybe that is the case, but there must be a system in place.
No, even when you pay in,
yes,
you get your relatives out and you give that number. Can't you still track and follow those the trail of these?
Can the accounts be blocked?
These terrorists, what we are calling bandits.
Can the accounts be blocked?
But I think that also shows the lack of coordination in the fight to stamp out terrorism, banditry, whatever you want to call it. If the parents have been left to their fate, if the parents are the ones negotiating directly with these terrorists, what happens to the security operatives? What role is the government playing in all of this? Because you would think, you would want to wonder that when these abductions take place, we are giving support to these families. And in support, you are also ensuring that the kidnapped loved ones are brought safely. And so you have to be there from the start to the finish. If you are there from the start to the finish, then you should be in the know of how these ransoms are being paid. Through these bank accounts, what banks, who is delivering the ransom to them, how are they receiving the ransom, even if it's food items, if it's cash, if it's through the bank. It just shows a lack of coordination in this fight. Exactly. Something is not right.
But Mr. Feni, we were on this channel when a senator came here and said he knows that parents call bandits to release their children, and they said it's a strategy to allow the parents negotiate with the bandits themselves. It was a senator that came here and said that on this platform. And somebody would have thought that the government should have taken over the negotiation, not even allow the parents to have the numbers of the bandits, but they said they are aware and we approve of it. We allow them go ahead. The question is, when are we going to stop all of this? In fact, there's always a turning point in every case of banditry or criminality or terrorism. I remember the Red Brigade in Italy. It was when they did it up to the extent and they killed Aldo Moro, the former prime minister of Italy. Then the Italians said, we will not take this any longer, and they fished out the Red Brigade. So what ransom will be the last ransom these bandits will collect until we turn around and say, we wouldn't take this anymore? It's all in our hands. It's all in our hands as a country.
Well, Emmanuel Ufene,
yes.
Another interesting story you brought up is the big 5 banks loans to customers hit 50 trillion in 5 years. And, the tier 1 banks are the ones dominating that. But if you go further down that report, that story, there is a report by McKinsey and Company, the global management consulting firm, pointing out certain issues that will still need to be addressed. One is how COVID-19 pandemic has also affected these banks. And, in the light of COVID-19, they will need to pay attention to certain structural vulnerabilities in order to ensure sustainable long-term growth. You know that one of the issues during COVID-19, at the height of it in 2020, was about how businesses can reposition. And with regard to these banks, we are told that in 2020, yes, they were affected. And again, another big concern will be, yes, loans to customers and all of that. You know that the CBN also has what they call loan to a deposit ratio, a certain percentage. So this high figure may have been encouraged by the strict, position of the central bank with regard to LDR. But the third leg of it will be how much of these loans went to SMEs, small and medium-scale enterprises, which constitute about 70%, of the economy. And that's a sector that is heavily in need of support.
Or even the productive sectors of the economy, i.e. agriculture and manufacturing.
It's good you mentioned agriculture. But on the whole, with regard to the banking sector, ahead of the MPC meeting, Monetary Policy Committee meeting, starting today, the acting director of communications of the CBN was quoted in one of the papers today as saying that Nigerian banks are steady and nobody needs to have any fears, whatever may be the challenges, that our banks are in a very good position. And I hope that that is the exact truth.
Well, if the CBN is saying so, then we can take that to the bank, if you will.
Anyway, thank you very much, Emmanuel Ufene. We'll see you again tomorrow.